Thank you, Diane, for inviting us to speak here tonight. Thank you for inviting us to this wonderful venue. Karla, it's always a pleasure to read with you, so thank you for that. When Diane told me about this exhibition, I was thinking, cool, awesome, road trip, journey, archetype, Joseph Campbell, can't wait to talk about it. And I thought, well, what's the access point? I mean, I probably got a couple of 100 poems about journeys, so I think I could probably pull something out. I thought, well, let's not start there. So I decided to start with the fact that I own a beautiful white Siberian Husky. Those of you, it's only a few of you have probably ever met this dog. I know Karla has. This is probably the most beautiful dog I've ever seen, most strong-willed, and one of the most intelligent. She has a huge vocabulary, and there's two things I can tell her that will absolutely drive her insane. And one of them is dinner. Dinner. You say the word dinner, and it's like the best dinner ever. It doesn't matter if she's been eating the same kibble for 10 years. She thinks it's like, whoa, Dad, I can't wait. So she just goes after it. But the second phrase I can tell her is road trip. She will line up at the door, wait to put the leash on, and she is in that car in just a matter of seconds. Now, it may just be that she just wants to sit in the back and look out the window and wave her little royal paw. You know, maybe that's all she wants to do. But one side of me, the irrational part of me, says, well, no, this is a primal thing. This is what all mammals like to do. All thinking beings, we all like to go on the road. We all like to discover. We all like to see something new and meet new people at the end of it. And then the rational side of me says, no, she just wants to go someplace different and go meet new people, and that's it. You know, she has no lasting aspirations. But then I thought, you know, by the very fact that I can say those words, and she knows to get in the car, and she knows we're going somewhere, then it makes me think there's not that many degrees of separation between her and somebody like, I don't know, Jack Kerouac, or Parsifal, or Odysseus. It's something that she wants to go do. She knows there's going to be a new experience. And so I thought, well, that's wonderful, because I can relate to that. Because every time I go on a road trip, I want to go learn something new. I want to go meet new people. And in the act of being a poet laureate, Karla can speak to this, log thousands of miles in my truck, in my car, visiting all these towns across Texas and thousands of people. And every time I go someplace new, it's more and more exciting. Of course, you know, every type of journey like this, every type of road trip, comes with certain built-in rules, I guess, or parameters. You know, sometimes the trip we get to choose, like you, and sometimes the trip picks us. We get the call that says your parents died, you got to go make a trip for a week or something. And sometimes we're a witness to a trip, and we just watch somebody else go through it. And sometimes we take a trip because we just got to take it. And sometimes we are the only ones that can be on that trip. We are the chosen person. We have to accomplish a certain task. But with almost every trip, almost every quest story, a lot of those quest stories are very introspective. That is, we think about what's happening to us, or we think how that hero is going to grow. But it's kind of patronizing, because we don't realize the effect we're going to have on the people we end up meeting. For instance, this poem I'd like to start off with is called Liber Geografia. It's a forenote that says Ptolemy, in the 2nd century AD, listed the latitude and longitudes of thousands of places in what was then the known world. His version of global geography, constantly revised, was considered the source for centuries. It wasn't until the 16th century that a little bit of North America was included. And the poem, the other day I was talking to the mailman, and we were discussing how I got very little mail. Hardly any ads or circulars, few things even addressed to occupant. I was reminded of the drive from Amarillo to New Mexico. On that road, there is no listening to the radio. I can turn it on and have it scan for a station, and it will search and find nothing. But I can drive past houses, and there are cars there, and sometimes dogs. One can only imagine the first coupon magazine of a Spanish schooner arriving battered on that shore of that land that was on the edge of the map. And the people there would be looking out their windows, interrupted as they were, singing to themselves, thinking that maybe it would have been better if they had been undiscovered. Thank you. And usually when somebody's about to go on a trip, they're very excited about it. They can't wait to pack up their suitcases and get on the road. And they're scared usually because if it's a place they've never been before, like cool, right? But most people go into a trip with a mixture of fear and excitement. That's why this poem comes from. That's where this poem comes from, called Risk. I tell everyone else to take risks, but I prefer to hide behind my in-the-moment words. I've always had a problem with poets who confess what they're feeling, especially considering the fact that I believe each poem's a contract where the poet has to convince the reader the poem belongs to both of them. Well, that's love then, isn't it? Some of my romantic friends say, which prompts them into nuzzling in public, which can get ugly really quickly. It's like writing poetry. You have to know when to stop. See what I did there? I diverted. Turned everything into a moment again. But everything is a series of moments. It's all because we're self-aware. We think every space we walk through, we instantly make important. Confession was good enough for St. Augustine, so I should be willing to accept it from other less talented and less saint-like poets. It's a risk, this laying oneself open. Years ago, my father took two old truck hoods and welded them together. Then on one end for a seat, he bolted a plywood plank onto a cage-empty 20-gallon can. It was the ugliest boat ever, but it could not be turned over. And all he wanted to do was fish on a quiet river. That's all. There's another hobby that's in the moment, fishing. It always depends on the X, Y, and Z of intersecting time, fish, and bait. We always hope the fish are waiting for us. We want to enter into a contract. Again, I've sidestepped. Years ago, in a moment of what I thought was foresight, I learned to dance. As it turns out, it's not a skill like riding a bicycle. You can forget. But fishing, riding, confessing, dancing, it's all taking a risk. You have to be shown how, even if you don't know the name for it or all the mechanics. Like my father. He would walk down the path to the river and throw the cooler and rods and bait and net and oar into the boat. Then he would unlock the boat from its chain and step in. He would use the oar to push off from the bank, and he would back up and sit down on that little square platform. A smile would cross his face. He would take a deep breath. Then he would paddle away, and it was obvious. He felt positively buoyant. Thank you. Thanks. I like to incorporate a lot of his history and mythological references that could never have happened. And I tend to build in a lot of scientific footnotes too. This particular poem is called the Hardy-Weinberg Law. If anybody here in the room knows what that is, I will be really impressed. But I'm going to go ahead and read the footnote anyway. The Hardy-Weinberg principle states that genetic frequencies in a population remain constant from generation to generation unless outside influences are introduced. In nature, these outside influences are always in effect. Therefore, the Hardy-Weinberg principle is an ideal condition that can never be achieved. So in other words, the population is always changing. The Hardy-Weinberg law. If Columbus and La Salle had not sailed until their sails were perfectly ironed, then today we might be working for the Aztecs. Some poets will not submit their poems for public consumption until the lines are exactly right. Their notebooks end up bulging with cabochons. It's the messiness of things that makes them perfect, the sugar falling from the cinnamon roll, the ice cream melting in the cone. Floodwaters rise and kiss against doorways. The fire comes down the mountain. The wind pushes trees into yards. When I was much younger, I wrote the characteristics of my perfect girl on a piece of paper, did a little chant, then burned the list in a coffee can, sending my wishes to the universe. Now you were sleeping in the crook of my arm, and maybe you were drooling a little bit and definitely snoring. And I am thankful for all bugs that will ever land in my coffee, grateful for all nails that will ever make my tires breathless. Thank you. Thank you. One of the books that Karla mentioned that she and I have worked on and currently have a traveling road trip on is this book here called No End of Vision. To capsulize the generation of this book, when Karla and I got to know each other, she told me she was also a photographer, and she sent me some of her photos. And it started resonating with me, and I said, can I write some poems based on your photos? And she sent me more photos, I wrote more poems, and before we knew it, we had a whole manuscript. All her photos, all my poetry. All the photos existed first. Almost all the poems are road poems, almost every one of them in the book. We consider this a journey book. When we take it on the road, in fact, we've been on 4 or 5 locations now across the state, and we present it as a journey book. You start in Texas, and you start full of hope, and then you end and you're still questioning, but you're even more full of hope, you're more inspired. Sometimes when we take trips, we do realize, like this wonderful essay of Diane's, that we are in the hands of something that's larger than us, and we just have to give in to it. One of the photos that Karla had, and I'm going to show this to you, and you can look at it later, it's this photo here of a bed of cactus. And you can't see it from where you're sitting, but in this lower corner is a little beetle, a tiny little beetle. It's just a little bitty bug. Your eyes have to know to look for it. But out of that little bitty beetle came this poem called Destination. I do not see his Virgil here, climbing backwards up this green terrain, and there are no small, miserable sinners impaled in their own misery. Perhaps this is not about overturned theology at all. This might be how bugs view the world, a flat geography, one surface after another. It's all the same to them. There are no lessons other than maneuvering around yucca, cholla, and fleshy nodes. I'm not omniscient here, but neither do I interfere. He has his steps and I have mine, and they have led me here to watch. Is he watching me in turn, deciding if he will have to navigate around my boat-like foot? Even the smallest leg has faith. His journey might not end when he climbs up the solid ground, or mine when I detour around the succulent. We step again, forward into our geography, held confident and secure by the great spatulate hand of God. Thank you. And another point from this book that again illustrates the fact that sometimes we're in the hands of something much larger, called Finding the Chapel Out Past Knowing. Somebody's been here before us and assumed we might need saving, or protection at the very least, in case we just had to go farther. Maybe they went there and came back. Every cross implies a what happens next. If you open this gate and go on, then all we can offer is words. It's a sin, this wanting to see past the horizon. It's the greed of knowing, the gluttony of over there, the pride of thinking we can survive anything. We can't know what fangs live under stones, how quickly we could boil, how distance gets deeper than God's eyes, how the thorns might prick our flesh. This chapel calls us to prayer one last time, and we just have to keep going. We whisper, asking for a path for the horses and a high place to go when the water gets too deep. Thank you. Can I have that book right there, please? Thank you. And since Karla read a love poem, one of the things I've always said is that I never write love poems. I do. I hate to admit it, but I really do. And I also had, years ago, I used to say I don't write children's poetry, and I ended up writing a whole children's book, so that promise is out the window. But when I write love poetry, I never like to say the word love anywhere in the poem. And usually at the end of it, the men will just be like clueless. They'll be like, what just happened? And the women will go, yeah, that's really good. So this is one of those love poems that, I don't know, I think just about every woman here can relate to, called Clyde Calamity. She looked at me as if I was insane when I bought the small package of 3 small chalkboards taped together but would not cut it open. Something might be sleeping there, and even if it isn't, we can still have some respect. Aren't excavation sites always quiet, I asked? What syllables might be a secret in this bundle? She should understand this. I've told her 1,000,000 times that I like to watch her bring her hair up in that kind of nonchalant, twirly way all women have, without looking, staring into nothing. She sticks a hairpin in it, and like a hummingbird, that hair shouldn't stay up there, but it does. And later that night, when we're watching TV on the sofa and on our 3rd glass of wine and her legs are draped across my legs, she will reach up to remove that pin. She will shake her head. Stars will shiver in the heavens, and whole cities will fall. And 2 more. As I said, some road trips, we realize that we are the only ones who could make that trip. Sometimes the story is our story. It can only be our story. So this poem is called Famous Movie Star. The title of this poem is the name of the famous star whose movie you have just seen recently. See? Your eyes went and checked to make sure it was or wasn't. But you wanted it to be, so I wanted it to be. And since it was about an actor, then you wanted it to be that good actor, the muscular one maybe, but not so muscular that it was frightening, strong enough to lift you out of the way, but only out of harm's way. A good hero was always in harm's way. He's always lifting someone out of harm's way. So maybe now you know the title. That's what you expect in this poem, something that will lift you out of harm's way. You might have checked the title again just to make sure, as if something had magically changed the title, because that is what films do. What if it was an actress, someone lithe and gracious and smart and noble and perhaps rich, and someone who was also good with 12 kinds of oriental weapons, and someone who could dance? She must be able to dance. Men cannot always dance in the movies, but women always can. It's one of the laws of the movie universe. So you expect this poem to be able to dance, perhaps 1, 2, 3, or a foxtrot or a tango. Did you ever realize movies had built-in meter? So here in this movie theater that is this book, you see the title and have expectations, because now, in the darkness, even though there might not be darkness, here in the darkness of the space that belongs only to you and the title and the poem, then you must realize that the poem belongs to you. It doesn't matter how many other people have seen this movie or read this title or scanned this poem. This time, right now, this space belongs to you. It is your hands holding the book, your hands framing the words, your breath fogging the air. All of the poems you've ever read were about you. Even Twinkle, Twinkle has an I in it. The Raven, The Grass, Innisfree. Sooner or later, someone will make a movie about this poem. It will lift people out of harm's way. It will make them dance. And you will be in it. Thank you. And one more final closing road trip poem that I'm sure Diane and Karla can attest to, but especially Diane, not finding cool Iowa. The poem is called as far as the eye. A road should not show more than a mind can handle. If it does, then it can't be trusted. Thank God for curvature. 12 miles, 15 if you're high enough, is near enough vista to fill the eye. If you're coming off a plateau, then it might be 30 miles or more. You'll think you can see clear through New Mexico, dropping off into a bowl with Colorado for a rim. It will be almost too much for comprehension, seeing that far out, a peek into tomorrow, being aware of where the road is going to take you. That's why God smudges the edge, no matter how tall you are. No geographic and psychic can see through it. It'll change by the time you get there anyway. Be content with as far as your looking goes. There's more than enough adventures between here and there. As you step forward, the horizon will step with you, and it will drop you off in places you daren't imagine. Thank you.